Let me set the scene. The year is 1998, and the Euro is created. I was of the age of 14, sitting on my parents' desktop PC, using god-awful dial-up internet to research the history of William the Conqueror's harrying of the North, when my friend, who for the purposes of this story shall be called Jake, messaged me on IRC. "Hey, some dude at school told me something really cool you can do on your PC." "What?" I asked. 1. Open up Start. 2. Go to Run. 3. Enter 2ndrely2.frt. 4. Tell me when you're done. I did what he told me. What opened up looked like some type of command prompt. It had 2 boxes that text should be entered into, and a regular command line. "Done," I informed him. In the box, write your name. In the second, write a password. And in the other bit, write rtileoh.us. I did exactly what I was told, and a box telling me to enter a nickname popped up. I wrote Tom Elton. The window closed. A few moments later, a batch file opened that said, "Welcome to the Artile, Ohio chat room. User Tom Elton has joined." I spent the next few months talking to my friends on that chat room. I had no idea who created it or hosted it. It seemed to only work in the Artile, Ohio area, meaning I could talk to anyone there in theory. The only people who were there was me, Jake, and a couple of other people I was friends with. Someone from the preparatory school across town, and once, somebody who claimed to work for the insurance company's tech support, who left after the only response he got was, "What school you at?" I don't know why we used this instead of a normal chat room. Maybe the whole secret gathering aspect of it made us more drawn to it. I don't know for sure. I woke up one fall morning and checked the chat room and found out that I had been promoted to an administrator. I had no idea who did it, but I got to brag to my friends for the next few days and change what people were typing to make them look dumb. But other than that, my powers went unused, until one day, I logged on to see that the anonymous messages to admins was not empty for a change. I wish I didn't check to see what was there. It was a full story from a user called 09HDI7RF, written in multiple single-sentence messages. They described how they were being physically abused by their parents, how they weren't allowed to go outside the house, and how she snuck into her dad's computer and saw this chat room open, and decided to tell anybody she could. I responded with, "Who is this? Also, if this was real, you would have called the cops." Later that day, the chat room stopped working. I couldn't get it to work at all. I got an error message every time I searched the command on my PC's run feature. I was royally pissed off with the fact that me and my friend's secret hidey hole was now dead. 2 days later, what do I see in the news? Girl shot dead by her father after breaking out of her home through a window. The mother was in police custody, but the father was never caught. The family's PC contains documents describing kids named Jake, Tom, and others, describing what he imagined their appearance to be, and what he would do to them if he ever found them, which was too horrific to describe here. That man was never caught, to my knowledge. He is still on the run today, hiding amongst everyone. I'm certain that he will never be caught.
If you really like my content and want to support me, please like this video and click the subscribe button. It helps me to grow my channel as essential in reaching a wider audience. Most of you watching my videos aren't subscribed to my channel, and that's why my animations can't reach their full potential. They aren't recommended to more people who would surely love my content as much as you do. You can always unsubscribe at any moment. Thank you in advance, and enjoy the rest of the video.
Tracy Blair was the oldest of 3 born to Tony and Kirk Blair. By all accounts, the girl was a happy and friendly child, as was her home life. The fast-growing family had just recently moved to a larger and more modern home across town, and Tracy was said to be somewhat saddened by the move and feared she would lose all friends she'd made. However, once it became apparent most would stay in contact, her attitude would change for the better. Although she was able to keep most of her older friends, she didn't hesitate to make new ones online. Her experience with the internet had just begun, and many of the hazards that went along with it would need to be learned quickly. Despite her innate suspicion of strangers, the girl was still young and trusting of those around her age. Unfortunately, an unknown man with evil intent would use this trust to his advantage. On a foggy morning in 2015, Tracy would disappear from her home, never to be seen again. From what is known, she had recently been in contact with someone posing as her 18-year-old boyfriend. They had been chatting back and forth in Japanese animation chat rooms, and the boy was doing his utmost to get Tracy to meet him. The chat logs show that she was very reluctant to do so. Multiple times she tried to express upon him the seriousness of the situation, especially as to her age. Tracy was barely 14 at the time and well aware of the legalities surrounding any relationship they may have. The young girl seemed to be more interested in making friends rather than anything more intimate, but he didn't appear to be catching on to her signals. By November, his many months of badgering had finally paid off. Tracy agreed to meet with him early that morning prior to leaving for school. She believed her parents would be none the wiser, and she turned out to be right. The young girl obviously had no idea what laid ahead of her. Everything she held dear, except her cell phone, was left behind, so any talk of her running away could be discounted. Thousands of hours of police work have gone into the investigation, and despite having a long trail of chat logs between her and the unknown boy, the computer forensics team are still no closer to tracing his name or location. The team doubts many 18-year-olds would have the extensive computer knowledge this individual appears to have, and are going with the assumption it was an older male. This theory is supported by a similar case in which an unknown middle-aged man had been posing as a teenage male. This man had also convinced another teenage girl to meet with him. On the day of the meet, he had attempted to abduct the girl, but a family picnicking nearby heard the girl's screams and drove the man away. The man was able to escape and is still at large as of the time of this writing. The similarities between the two cases have convinced authorities that Tracy was likely the victim of this same perpetrator. How many other young females have fallen for this ruse is unknown. However, what can be almost positive of is that he, or those like him, may be online attempting to gain the trust of another child this very minute. So I please ask all of you to educate your children on the dangers of the web and monitor their contact online. They also want it to be known that they are still working diligently on Tracy's case and hope she will be found safe very soon. In the meantime, the safety of your own children should be foremost in your mind. If you have any information about Tracy's disappearance, detectives ask you to contact your local law enforcement officials. K-Moth Star is typing.
Is anyone else bored? I don't want to play Gmod anymore, and I don't want to play 4 more hours of Battlefield 1.
JRev13 is typing.
Nah, man. I'm having fun. It's just you.
LMI Legend is typing.
Yeah, I'm bored too. Let's go do some other shit. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. It was 4 a.m., and I had school tomorrow. My friends finally convinced me to pull an all-night gaming marathon. I sighed, knowing that I would regret this in the morning, and finally forced myself to open my eyes. We gotta pass the time somehow. We got like 2.5 hours left until school. What do you guys suggest? Hey, how about World of Tanks? I thought about it for a second, but World of Tanks was really not my type of game. If anything, I wanted to play some Rainbow Six Siege, but nobody else in my group liked it. They thought it was really slow-paced and wasn't a lot of fun. Yeah, no, f*** World of Tanks. Too gritty anyways, and not fun enough to grind for good tanks. Yeah, man, I guess I can agree with that. Hey, can we start a group call or something? I'm sick of typing. Hell no. My ears hurt from wearing this headset for 8 hours. And I don't want to hear you guys talking into it. I just want to play. Sound off, KK?
Martin has joined this room.
Who the f*** is Martin? I got no clue. Who invited him? Yeah, not me. Hey Martin, who the f*** are you?
Martin is typing.
Hello, friend.
Alright, which one of you guys is using an alternate account? I'm not prone to spooks. Good effort, though. Hey man, I'm not doing it. Yeah, same here. Kick him maybe? Yeah, I got it. I place my hand on the mouse and click on Martin's name. What came up was a profile with no name, bio, and a solid black profile picture. Scrolling down, I discovered that the account had only been made a few days before. Okay, seriously, who the f*** is doing it? The account was made like a few days ago. It's not me, man. Hey, just kick him already, and let's go play something. Alright. I'm really curious to see which one of you guys did it. I right-clicked on Martin and multiple options came up. I clicked on kick, and clicked out of the menu. Okay, he should be gone now. It was probably Legend though, man.
Martin is typing.
Seriously, it's one of you. And if you don't tell me, I'll kick you. I promise.
Group call started.
I nearly fell out of my chair, not realizing that my speakers were actually not muted. The sudden ring caught me off guard. I quickly hit mute on the speakers and turned back to the screen.
Martin, LMI Legend, plus one other person are calling.
I was starting to worry. This was just too bizarre to ignore. I tried kicking Martin again, but it didn't work. Confused, I looked at the call pop-up. Whoever this was, I decided that I should at least play along for now. I moved the mouse over to the green pickup call button and clicked. The text to the chat room was replaced by the call screen, showing the profile picture of my two friends, along with the solid black profile picture that this Martin guy had. I quickly plugged in my headphones and put them on. Breathing. The sound of someone breathing into their microphone was what I was greeted with. When I put on my headphones, it was extremely loud, like the person had the microphone right up to their mouth. The microphone clearly did not have a pop filter, as the breathing came out loud and distorted. I quickly turned down my volume, as the breathing was beginning to hurt my head. In the background, I heard both of my friends talking, but I simply could not make out what they were saying. After a little while, both of my friends hung up. Putting my hand on the mouse, I began moving it towards the red hang up button, but I was interrupted by a sudden change on my screen. The solid black square of a profile picture was replaced with a loading icon. This Martin person was turning on their camera. Now here's something that you need to know about me. Whenever I see something on the internet that I simply doubt, I will ask questions. If somebody shows me a supposedly haunted video, I usually just end up laughing and counter it with simple logic. However, what I saw was something completely different. It was not a hoax. What I saw was real. The loading icon disappeared and was replaced with an image. Black. That was the first thing I saw. Then, I saw a slight movement. As I examined the darkness more and more, I realized that I was seeing somebody walking. At first, I wasn't sure where, but then I saw grass. It wasn't very visible, but I saw it. Suddenly, the darkness was replaced by a bright light. The person walking had just turned on a flashlight. I looked closely and saw grass, as well as a tree in the distance. The person then turned around, and my blood ran cold with terror. I realized exactly where the man was. When he turned around, he pointed the camera at a house. It was pitch black, except for a single bright and slightly yellow glow coming from the second floor window. Right next to the man was my father's grill, with folding chairs placed around it. To the far right of the house, I saw the small garden shed that we had, specifically used for storing tools. The man was standing in my backyard. I leapt out of my chair and ran downstairs to make sure both the front and back doors were locked. Realizing that they were, I ran back upstairs and looked at my screen. Scrolled down past the countless messages of my friends, asking me if I was okay, or if I was asleep, to see a single message from Martin.
I go in now.
I looked to the single window in my room, overlooking the backyard. My backyard was mostly empty, with almost nothing but a tree in the middle. On the tree stood a man, A very tall yet thin man. This man was wearing almost nothing, other than some tore-up jeans and a shirt. He must have triggered the motion sensor garden lights, as the whole garden was now lit up. I could see almost every detail, and what I saw terrified me. The man was crouching on a branch, with a crazed spark in his eyes. His mouth was now stretched into a wide, insane grin, and I could see his horrible rotten yellow teeth. In his hand, he held a mobile phone and a flashlight. Suddenly he tossed the flashlight and his phone to the side. He leapt down off the tree and towards the back door of the house. I heard loud banging noises and what sounded like wailing coming from downstairs. My parents burst through my door, asking me what the hell was going on. My younger brother stood by their side, grasping at my father's leg. I didn't know what to say, so I just told them that there was a man downstairs trying to get in. They rushed downstairs and told me to lock my brother in the upstairs bathroom. Holding my brother's hand, we walked together towards the bathroom, closing and locking the door. I sprinted downstairs towards the back door and almost vomited. The insane man was dragging the body of my father along the ground. I screamed and locked the back door, only to see the insane man dash towards the door, through the door's window. Stumbling back in fear, I ran to the upstairs bathroom and asked my brother to unlock the door. He complied, and I rushed in, locking it behind me. I have been sitting in this damned bathroom for hours, with nothing but my brother and my laptop. My little brother keeps telling me that he's hungry. I don't know if I can take much more of this, but starving to death seems better than confronting that monster. My laptop is almost dead now, and I don't know what to do. A few hours back, I heard the sound of a window sliding open, and for the last hour I've been hearing this insane babbling, as well as the sound of footsteps, and it sounds as if this thing is running all over the house, looking for us. The worst part is 5 minutes ago it all stopped. I no longer heard footsteps or the insane babbling. The banging is gone as well. The worst part is that deep down, I want those sounds to come back, because anything is better than listening to this thing sit patiently outside my door, breathing and scratching at the handle. The story I wish to share with you today isn't your typical story that you will hear on this channel. Stories on this channel often regale us with situations of stalkers and other horrors, of how the victims in these stories nearly made it out alive. What we never hear, though, is the stalker's side of the story. If you were to pin an element of horror to my story, it would be that of a ruined reputation caused by exaggerated harms from a supposed victim. Being falsely accused of something should scare anybody, but we never stop to consider that there are two sides to every situation. Now, don't get me wrong. I think stalking is wrong. I think every person has the right to feel safe and unannoyed. I also feel that if a person is accused of something, they have a right to defend his or her actions. You may think, why don't you just get a lawyer and fight it? Well, it's just not that simple. Lawyers are expensive, public defenders are overworked, and also, many states have broad stalking laws, where even if you send somebody polite messages, they can interpret that as stalking. My nightmare begins in 2019. As a little preface, I have a very visible disability. Meeting women is hard for me. Despite my challenges, I still put myself out there, and I try to talk with people online and in person. I can't quite tell you how I came across her, but this girl, whom I will call Brooke, was on my people that I may know list on Instagram. Although I didn't know her, I wanted to. I sent her some polite messages, and she emailed me back, and thus we began our friendship. Soon our messages evolved into texting. She would tell me things about her, and I would tell her things about me. I honestly thought that we would start dating at some point, and this would be my first real relationship. Out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell on me that she was starting to see another guy. I was crushed. I couldn't believe it, but I remained cool, and I figured that being her friend was the next best thing. As time went on, her boyfriend became very hostile towards me, and they even broke up a few times. It was a mess. One day, through our messages, she relayed to me her struggles with mental health. She asked me if I ever thought of dying, and also told me about her past history with drug abuse. She also said that she kept having nightmares of an invisible man chasing her. I was honestly pretty spooked, but since I've dealt with issues of my own, I wasn't going to abandon her. I would be a hypocrite if I did that. We soon set in motion a plan of meeting up for her birthday. That's how close we were. But just like every good thing in life, it must come to an end. Nothing lasts forever. Brooke texted me one day and said very matter-of-factly, "The Holy Ghost doesn't give me good feelings about you." I was confused. Any normal person would have just ended it there, as that text would probably be a major red flag to anyone. But I have to admit that I was desperate. My pleas of trying to work it out with her didn't sway her, and she proceeded to block me. I am ashamed to admit it, but I have mental problems of my own, and I guess her blocking me caused me to have a breakdown. I tried emailing her, explaining how hurt I was, but she didn't reply. I was devastated. I would stay up at night hoping that she would respond, but she never did. I know at this point in the story I probably sound like an obsessed loser, but I still feel that my actions were not that of a stalker, because I never threatened her, nor did I do anything that would cause fear. I was simply trying to work out a problem. Isn't that what people who are in friendships are supposed to do? Also, with my disability, making connections is hard, so I was trying my best to hold on to what I felt was a valuable connection in my life, and she never explicitly told me to stop. Now, I must be clear, I wasn't messaging her every day. At most, I messaged her every other week. Suddenly, after 3 months, Brooke finally said something. Instead of telling me what happened or what was wrong, she flatly said to stop. I was so confused. All I wanted was an explanation. I wanted to know where things went wrong. After a few polite messages of questioning her, trying to uncover some answers, I finally got the hint, and I left her alone. I sat by myself and pondered the future. It was time for me to move on. I had gotten the response I wanted, and she told me to stop, and I had to respect that. Unfortunately, that's not how things played out. Before I knew it, I had officers at my doorstep serving me with a criminal summons for the misdemeanor of stalking. I was absolutely floored. Sending messages, trying to work something out, is now cyberstalking? I couldn't believe it. I immediately got an attorney and scoured through all of my email communications to her and gave them to my lawyer. He looked over the evidence and couldn't believe that I was being charged with stalking. In the months that followed, hearings were held over Zoom. Brooke gave a brief testimony and twisted the events of what actually happened. I tried sharing my version of events, but the judge simply would not listen. Every day felt like a haze. I had never been in trouble in my life before. Trolls that harassed me online began to spread the rumor that I was a stalker. They would send me emails and taunt me for my current predicament. I was the one being harassed. Slowly my confidence died. I didn't know if I would ever be able to talk to anyone again, if I would even say hi to another girl. Would she turn around and lie and say that I was stalking her too? The prosecutor briefly considered dropping the charge, but was informed that I partake in vices that are legal in another state, and that changed his mind. He claimed that partaking in that recreation, even if it was legal, gave him an insight into my character. This nightmare just kept getting worse and worse. Now my personal life was being used against me. What was he going to do next? Use my eating habits against me too? As the situation spiraled out of control, I had to make a hard choice, and I ended up pleading guilty to the misdemeanor charge. People automatically think that if someone pleads guilty, then they really must be. I think people who have that perspective have never actually been in a situation like I was. When you're up against the state, it's really hard to do anything other than plead guilty. They essentially have you in a chokehold and place your feet against the fire. I felt dirty pleading guilty because I knew I was innocent, but I felt that it was the only way that I would ever be able to move on with my life. 2 years have passed since this incident. I know that throughout the story it may seem like I was deflecting blame. I 100% admit that I was annoying at most, but I disagree that my actions were criminal though. Just imagine if we charged every single person on Facebook who messaged another person multiple times or did other annoying conduct. Our jails would be overbooked, more so than they already are now. I'm not going to share where this took place, but I will say that it took place in a city whose population is about 100,000. They have a large roster of people being charged. I think they do this on purpose and make it a game of ruining people's lives because the police and city attorneys have quotas they have to meet. As I said at the beginning, this wasn't your typical story. This story is scary in another way. Any one of us could be charged at any moment, and our lives turned upside down, and our reputations ruined forever, all based on lies. Never once did a police officer or city official reach out to me and ask for my side of the story. They decided just to charge me because they didn't like me. It's absolutely frightening to think about how many people are in prison for alleged crimes based on exaggerated claims. Next time you hear a story of someone being accused of something, I strongly advise you to stop and perhaps consider their side of the story as well, before you start judging them.
For almost a few years now, end of August 2019 to be exact, I had moved into an apartment in a different city because my mother, who I lived with in my hometown, passed away from cancer. I have moved here with my long-term boyfriend and one other roommate. We all absolutely love it here. The location is great. It's a 15-minute bike ride from my university, and it's located at a square with a grocery store, drugstore, lunchrooms, and that kind of thing. So we have pretty much everything we could possibly need to survive within walking distance. However, after just a month or two of living here, someone has started to ring my doorbell at exactly 11:05 p.m. semi-regularly. Sometimes every day, sometimes every other day. Sometimes there's a week in between, and sometimes there's a couple of weeks in between. But it is always around 11:05 p.m., and every single time, I get no answer each time I ask through the intercom who it is. Except for one time, but I will get to that in a bit. At first, I thought it was friends from one of the neighbors who accidentally rang the wrong doorbell, but after around the fourth time, I grew suspicious, and after more than those 4 times, I started noticing that it always happens at either exactly 11:05 p.m. or a couple minutes earlier or later. My boyfriend and my roommate both work at bars, so they work until very late and would usually only get home around 2 a.m. So each time it happened, I was always alone at home. It started to really freak me out after a while. When I first told them about it, they kinda shrugged it off and said it was probably a wrong dial, much like I thought at first. But when I told them that it has happened so many times, and sometimes even daily, they didn't really believe me and that I was just being paranoid and spooked. However, one night, when the doorbell rang again, I answered the intercom asking who it was. I heard heavy breathing. I was thoroughly spooked at that moment. I was again home alone and kept asking who they were and what they wanted. I couldn't make up from the breathing if it was a man or a woman, but I heard a strange mumbling or whispering, and then it was dead silent. They had appeared to have left. I put my apartment door on a double lock after that. I was so scared and spooked out. Thankfully, my roommate got home a little earlier that night. Around 30 minutes after the doorbell rang, he could tell how upset I was. Now with the whole pandemic crisis, my roommate and boyfriend aren't able to work anymore. They now also witness the frequent door ringing at 11:05 p.m., so now they do believe me and agree that it's very odd and creepy. We have a balcony that looks down at where our apartment building's main front door is, but because there's a shop underneath us that always has the awning out, the view to the door is partially obscured. Every time our doorbell rang, me, my boyfriend, and roommate would go over to the balcony to see if we could see anyone, but we never could. I've also asked my neighbors from my apartment building if their doorbell gets rang so often, but the ones that I asked all said it's never happened to them. So a few weeks ago, my roommate decided to do some investigating. He went outside our apartment building at 11 p.m., standing across the street. He pretended to have a smoke while keeping an eye on the door. He said he did see a man who looked kind of suspicious wandering around our apartment building. He slowed his pace down significantly as soon as he approached our door, but when he spotted my roommate looking at him, he quickly walked away. We aren't completely sure if that's the door ringer, but that was very, very suspicious. Our doorbell hasn't gone off at night since that day. I'm hoping that maybe it will stop now, but there is a possibility that it will continue again in a few weeks.